Before we get started, I want to give huge shout outs to community partners Epilepsy Foundation of America and the Danny Did Foundation. Also, big thanks to Neurelis and SK Life Science. Thanks so much, y'all, for believing in this podcast and making conversations like this possible. Okay, here we go. Hey guys, welcome to season 8 of What the F. I am so pumped about how we are kicking this off, especially so close to Mother's Day, because we have a mother-daughter duo who both have been living with epilepsy, who both were diagnosed at the same age, and who both felt a pressure to kind of keep it quiet for a while. Obviously, they don't anymore, and they're here to talk about their experience, and I'm so excited for them to share their really inspiring stories and just dive right into it. Pree and Sarabjeet, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you,
We're super
Landis.
excited.
Oh my God, you guys are so amazing. So I want our audience to know, who you guys are before we dive in. And I have to bring up my note cards here because you all are pretty impressive. So we have Pree Bhutani, who is already at such a young age a prominent epilepsy advocate. She has spoken at congressional hearings, lobbied for seizure first aid legislation, and worked with schools to help ensure seizure safety. She has a background in marketing and public speaking, a recent grad from George Washington University. And Pree, I've said it once, I'll say it again. If I could afford you, I would hire you as my marketing manager because you are so good at it. So. Thank you.
Sweet.
Oh no, you are just really that good. So if anyone wants to, donate for Pree's salary as marketing, I'll take it.
I'll take it. I mean,
yeah. And then we have Mama B, Sarabjeet, who is a seasonal educator and advocate living with epilepsy for 50 plus years, is a former high school counselor, currently a human rights commissioner in Maryland with a focus on disability rights. And just in case that wasn't enough, she is also the founder of Seva Outreach Circle, which works with shelters, foster programs, and disability organizations. I feel like we could end the episode there. And everyone would be so inspired and be like, okay, that's good. But what I really want to start with is because I've never heard a story like yours before where both of you were diagnosed at age 10. And Sarabjeet, I'm just so curious what that was like as a mom who had already gone through this and you all of a sudden see your daughter living not the same experience, but a very similar one.
Landis, so thank you for having us here. And it's such a great question. So I'm going to back up a little bit. In preparation for this podcast, I talked to my mom a whole lot. What was it like for her to have a daughter with epilepsy? And it does run in our family. My mom was 20 years old when she had me. And what I learned that's so interesting is I've always thought I was 10 years old when I started having seizures. I was 6 years old. I did not know that until we never really spoke about
So this is new. Okay, wait.
This is new for
information.
Me because of you. Because of you. So when I was 6 years old, I had a full-blown tonic-clonic seizure at a family wedding. So those family members knew that was out and about, if they had seen it. But when I was in school, that's when teachers also started noticing that I would just kind of blankly stare at something, including the school bus. The school bus would be right there. And instead of getting on the school bus, I would just be staring. So it was my teachers, and then it was also at the wedding. So both these things that happened. For me, I have no recollection of that. I guess, as a kid, my parents didn't speak to me about it much. But in my recollection, and when I share my story, I always say I was 10 years old because I remember seizure from then, but actually it was much earlier. So to answer your question about when I became a mom and I realized that my daughter had epilepsy also, immense guilt. And Pree and I were talking about this yesterday. I don't think I've ever said that out loud. I don't think I've ever even expressed to my amazing husband, to my parents, to Pree, how much guilt I carried, fine. Like we
Can
look
you?
alike. We have that big smile. We have nice hair. But why did I have to give her this epilepsy diagnosis?
Oh, so
So,
you felt like a responsibility.
oh, yes, of course, of
Wow.
course.
I'm just so appreciative for you bringing that up because I think there's a lot of parents out there whose children have epilepsy who most likely felt or feel that same sort of heaviness and weight of guilt.
Yes, it is. Weight is the right word. It's a burden. Like, my gosh, this is what I've done. However, it also gave me that really great understanding and empathy. And I was able to just guide Preetham, like, I understand that's an aura that you're experiencing, or I know this medication, it's just exhausting, and that brain fog. So I was able to advocate and I was able to support and I was able to guide until things flipped and I was following her lead because this girl of mine is brave. She just used her voice and I just watched and I was just like, still silent about my epilepsy while my daughter ran with it, advocated, like, you had said in the introduction. So here I am today, thanks to my daughter. Really, thanks to my daughter. I mean, for 50 years, I didn't say much,
Wow.
just watched her.
And so I'm curious about this conversation you had with your mother about
Mm.
it, and also as to why there was I didn't say much.
Mhm.
Where does that come from, or what was that? What was it, like a pressure? Was it a shame? Was it just all of the things? Or yeah, I guess because I think we all have like different reasons for
Yeah.
not talking about our epilepsy, and there's nothing wrong with not talking about it and being
Mm.
public about it. But then you want, like, there's just that borderline of privacy versus shame,
That's right.
you know?
That's right.
And I'm
Yeah.
just curious as to where your desire to just kind of stay inward came from.
That's a great question. It's also a very complicated question. So I'm talking about like the 70s, the 80s, when people didn't talk about epilepsy. There wasn't that awareness. We still have a long ways to go. But, at that time, like ADA started in the 1990s. So, there wasn't that information, that awareness. There was still that stigma, but compounded with the time that we're talking about is also cultural, right? So we come from a South Asian background. We're from India. My parents are immigrants from India. And, we are deeply rooted in shame and honor. Shame and honor. So nobody sat down with me and said, we're not going to talk about it. But it was like this silently understood situation. Like, there are things we talk about, there are things we highlight about ourselves and our family, and there are things that we don't talk about. So it was very much understood, like I said, nobody said, oh, we're not talking about this. But I never, and epilepsy, by the way, runs in our family. So generations. And the sad thing, Landis, is that we never have supported each other by dialoguing, empowering, kind of saying, hey, heads up, this could be happening, So we still, to this day, speak about epilepsy in our family and in our community in whispers. In whispers.
Wow.
This one screams about it, which bravo. But that's very unusual, right? It's said in whispers. And even for people who know that, Pree is an advocate, it's still like, me too. Me too. You know what I mean? So, and listen, everyone's got their own journey. And I promise you, I'm not sitting here judging anyone because it took me 50 years, right? It took this one 14 years, maybe less than 14 years. But we definitely keep secrets. So one of my things at this time is to be able to talk to like young people about, secrets don't protect us. They isolate us. They really isolate us. Secrets isolate us,
Wow. Wait. I want to pause for that because
Yeah.
that's really beautiful. Secrets don't protect us.
No.
They isolate us. And wow, that is really big. And I think too, like when you say like the honor part of it,
Yes.
it's like there is this kind of like societal like bravery, the brave face, the, kind of like
Yes.
of not sharing, of like, people, the biggest compliment like a sick person can get is like, oh, you'd never know. It's like, well, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? Like,
Yes.
like I'm
Yes.
sorry if you could tell I had a seizure yesterday.
Yes.
Like, so I've just never thought about it in that context, and I think that's really relatable to a lot of people. I think that's really huge, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate this, you having this forum for these conversations, because if we're going to break stigma, it's not going to be alone in our homes. It's like as a community, that's how you break stigma, right?
Totally.
Through these
Totally.
conversations. So,
Agreed. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like, and it's, and I think like conversations can be different for every person too,
yeah.
whether it's like here on a podcast or, on Capitol Hill, like Pree, it's, or whether it's, just volunteering or doing something, that kind of helps the community without necessarily having to be, to disregard your own privacy boundaries, I would say, I just never want I go over this point so much because I never want anyone to feel bad about not sharing,
Absolutely
Yeah.
not.
but Pree, when you and I talked, you had mentioned too that like it did take you some time to start telling even like your teachers or your classmates about it. And I want to kind of talk through that, and also what switch flipped for you that kind of was like, oh, I'm gonna start making some noise here.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed when I was 10. I was at my friend's house and I just started feeling this really like unusual sickness that I'd never felt before. So I like ran to the bathroom. Next thing I know, we're pulling into the garage at home. And I was like, Mom, did I fall asleep in my friend's house? And she knew immediately what had gone on. I had just essentially blacked out for like 20 minutes. I was walking, talking. Nobody knew anything was wrong, but I have no recollection.
Yeah. Those are
And
like the weirdest seizures
so
because
weird.
people don't know,
I
they can't
know.
tell. And so there's nothing really anyone can do unless you're with someone who, especially the first one,
Yeah.
that's so, yeah,
It's
that's very disarming.
terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I think like I walked down her stairs. Like I got in the car and buckled myself up and
Oh my God,
I'm
I've done that too.
unconscious.
Mm.
What?
Yeah, did you say you were on crutches?
No, like
Oh.
unconscious.
Oh, I thought you were like, that was on crutches. Like, that is a whole new level.
Very different level.
Yeah, no, there's been times where I'm like, I pull up in an Uber and I'm like, what? When
Oh,
did I
wow.
get in this thing?
Yeah.
But okay, so at that time, did you know that your mom had epilepsy?
I did not. My mom knew immediately what had happened. I don't remember how I learned that you had epilepsy, actually.
I don't remember either,
I
but I'm sure
don't.
it was shortly
It,
after that.
yeah, I'm sure. It all happened so fast. I was in fifth grade. Next thing I know, I'm skipping school, like, super often, skipping activities with my friends because I was always in hospitals
Mm.
and testing out new medications and EEGs and MRIs, and you know how that whole thing goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously it's a lot for a 10-year-old. And it was very tough, like my friends would constantly ask me like, "Hey, why weren't you at school today? Why are you always missing so much?" And I just had nothing to say because it's like when you're that young, all you really want is to fit in. And saying like, "Oh, I have seizures." Maybe not the best way to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just kind of something that we all just like kept hidden, I guess. So for a large majority of my life, I never told anybody. My friends didn't know. I was even too hesitant to talk to my teachers about it. It just wasn't really a thing that I wanted people to know about because I wanted to appear like normal, I guess. And, as a teenage girl, that's really all you want, essentially.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think that's kind of, it doesn't it's like the hardest in the teenage years, especially
Yes.
like middle school, I think anyway.
Yeah.
But then like some of that whole like wanting to make sure you're normal never totally goes away.
No,
There's always, but it's like so heightened in
it
that time
is.
frame
Right.
It
where you're all of a
is.
sudden like, oh, like we are different. Oh, but I don't want to be different. I don't want attention. So
Exactly.
tacking on seizures to that had to be just so hard.
Exactly. It definitely was. And like going back to what you were saying about how like that feeling never goes away. Like it kind of brings back what you were saying earlier about the difference between like shame and privacy, which
Right.
is like I feel like for me like that kind of, growing up, it was always that shame that oh, I'm so different from my peers. I have this weird thing inside of me and I don't know what it
Mm.
is. And then as I got older, it's, sometimes I still don't want to talk about it. And that's when, the line to kind of privacy like came across. It's like I don't want to advertise my epilepsy everywhere, but I do still want to advocate for it. But I feel like when those lines really blurred for me was when I want to say 16 or 17. I was in 11th grade. And I went to a small all girls Catholic school. So we would do, retreats and stuff. And so one night there was an overnight retreat that we did. And at dinner, the entire grade was in the same room. And as soon as I sat down, I fell out of my chair and had a
Mm.
seizure.
Oh gosh. I mean,
And
talk about like the worst
Right.
fucking timing.
I
Yeah.
know,
Everyone's here. Like,
right?
you poor thing.
Like some
God.
of my best friends didn't even know. And now my entire class knew. And it's like 120 people. Like that was unbelievable. That was the first time I had a seizure in front of anyone except for my family. Um, and yeah, the first time that I felt like, I didn't have a choice but to kind of out
Mm.
myself at that point because everybody knew there was something wrong with me and there was something different about me at that point when that happens. So that was kind of, I don't know. At first, I was a little embarrassed, obviously.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think I don't know, for me anyway, that's something that doesn't go away yet. Like,
yeah.
I say yet because I'm like, maybe one day.
Mm.
But I still will have seizures in front of people. It's
Yeah.
like the most vulnerable thing because you literally
Hmm.
have no control over what's going on.
Exactly.
And I'll even apologize to Steve, my husband,
Mm.
and he's like, please stop apologizing. Like, stop, like immediately after there's like this like embarrassment. And he's like, it's me. It's fine. I'm like,
Yes.
I know, but there's a whole,
Yeah.
so like, again, as a teenager, that's just even more magnified.
Yeah. Cause like you're saying, like there's kind of this like line that we've drawn in society, I feel like, about what's normal. And so when somebody has something like epilepsy or any other sort of disability, that's officially not normal and it makes you
Mm.
different. And that's even in front of, like you said, your husband, your closest friends, that's still not really a line that you want to cross. Because I don't know, I feel like there's just constantly that feeling of shame that, I carry this thing with me all the time and nobody gets me and I'm different and I'm weird. And it's like, I feel like that feeling never 100% goes away, even when you're with your most loved ones.
That is such a good point. And I think
Yeah.
something that like I feel like this is a therapy session for me right now
Oh.
because I'm like I really need to learn to live with that though. Like
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
accept that that's part of it for me right now.
Yeah.
That like that there is shame, but that doesn't it's okay to acknowledge it. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's almost then like I've had like shame for feeling shame, you know?
Yeah.
Mm.
And now just with you saying this, I'm like, that is just a part of it. And rather than looking to cure it, maybe just accept it and learn to grow with it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And so that is what I tried to do actually after the seizure that I had in front of my whole grade. I was shocked at like the support that I was getting from my classmates. So obviously, after that, I couldn't sleep over. So I was just sitting in a corner waiting for my mom to pick me up.
Oh.
And all of my classmates kept coming up to me and being like, Pree, are you okay? What's going on? Like, I want you to be better, whatever. Everyone was so sweet and supportive. And then even like during our retreats, like, because it was a small all girl school, it was like a big thing for us to kind of write notes to when we were away to our loved ones, our friends, whoever. And so many girls in my class had written notes to me.
Oh,
Just
I'm going to
It's so
cry.
sweet.
That is so
So,
sweet.
so amazing.
like even girls who I wasn't really friends with, like they still, wrote all these kind things about me. And, it was a shock for me because my best friends didn't even know that I had epilepsy. So now I'm here having a seizure in front of people who I don't talk to that much, and they're showing me this immense support as if they've known for years. And that was just that was kind of like a turning point for me, I guess. Where I was like, oh my God, people don't think I'm weird. People don't hate me. Like, what is going on?
Yeah. Well, and like you kind of went to like it sounds like a very magical school
A
because
magical school.
that is not a lot of experiences that I've heard, right? But I
Yeah.
think about the work you've done and are doing about, seizure safety in schools and how every school could be a magical school with that extra knowledge, even though your school didn't have it. Yours is just like a Harry Potter place where everyone, well, it's just very, very sprinkled with like compassion and love. But I just think about how that could be for everyone else,
Yeah.
who doesn't, who maybe didn't have that experience, and how you're already trying to change that, which is just amazing.
Yeah, I am like so grateful for the support that my school offered me, as a teenage girl with epilepsy. Like my school counselor, she understood. She would like I was able to leave classes and go to the nurse's office if I didn't feel well. She would let me just sleep for as long as I needed. Um and when this happened, she was there and she, did seizure first aid for me. And then even, my school counselor, she actually at the beginning of junior year had introduced me to a freshman who had recently been diagnosed and asked me to kind of, mentor her and like, because we could connect on that level. And so that was, this
How
really,
huge
It's
for
a
yeah,
big
for
deal.
oh
To
my
make that
gosh.
connection,
it
Yes.
is.
connecting is everything.
It is. It
Yeah,
changes everything.
yeah, it does. It
Because it
does.
goes back to that feeling of not being normal, but then you found someone who shares, even if you don't have the same
Yeah,
type of epilepsy, which no one does, there's still that common thread where it's like you meet
yeah,
someone and you're like, but I do get your experience more than the average Joe.
Yes.
So
yeah,
that's amazing.
And then you guys
it
shared that
is.
experience
Yeah,
with,
so she was kind of more open about her epilepsy than I was. For her, it never really felt like something she was trying to hide. So, I told her when I had this seizure, and we decided, like, okay, why is this like such a big secret? Like, if we want to break the stigma, why don't we start with our school community? Everyone knows that both of us have epilepsy, so you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we decided to start a school-wide fundraiser. We had a presentation in front of the entire school at a school assembly one day.
Wow.
So brave.
I know.
Yeah.
That's what I was
So
thinking.
brave.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We like created a slideshow talking about what epilepsy is, the different kinds of seizures. We even put a slide of like celebrities who have epilepsy or seizures just to make it a little more relatable, and it was just the two of us on that stage talking to the entire school.
Yeah.
And after school that day, we held a fundraiser. A lot of like clubs and stuff would do pizza fundraisers. So the two of us did one for seizure research. So we just had a pizza sale. And another thing we would do at my school was we had uniforms. And so girls would, whenever someone had a fundraiser, they would like put things on safety pins and you would pin it to your skirt. So we made
That's so cute.
epilepsy ribbons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's adorable.
And the girls would wear them. You would just wear, like, keep the pins on your skirt for the entire school year. So people, and obviously the epilepsy color is so pretty. So, you know, that made people love them even more.
Awesome.
So, yeah, so that was definitely a turning point for me, that entire experience. And it was even more meaningful that, you know, after I'd opened up, people were obviously still supportive, but there were even people who would randomly come up to me in the hallway and be like, I didn't know you had epilepsy. My brother was just diagnosed with epilepsy. And that happened twice. And it just makes me think, like, so many people are carrying this burden and this secret with them, right? It must be so relieving for these girls to even just get it off their backs that their family members have epilepsy, right? Because they might not have anyone to talk to, because so many people think that they don't know anybody with epilepsy. Meanwhile, I was there the whole time, right? So it's like, so, you know, yeah, so that was the point for me where I decided I wanted to be an advocate, was when the last group of people who I wanted to know I had epilepsy found out. So I was like, okay, what the hell? Like, why are we still keeping this a secret then?
Yeah, here we go. You're like, cat's literally out of the bag, so
Yeah.
I'm just gonna roll with it.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
And what was that like for you, Sarabjeet, to watch this all unfold?
I was so, and still am so proud. There was no hesitation for me. And the connection, you know, because I think then followed the camp that you were a counselor in training at, then Teen Speak Up. So, you know, I dealt with my pregnancy. I dealt with my epilepsy. Wow. Blooper. I'll start all over.
You skipped a few steps there.
Yeah, I did. I really did. Because you know, at this age, I mean, it was private, you know, I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't have any friends that I could like bounce things off. I certainly didn't have like summer camps and community and, you know, that common language of, you know, aura and brain fog and all that. So I was delighted, absolutely delighted that this exists, that this incredible school counselor, and to be honest, this was an incredible school community. Their motto is empowering girls, and this is what they did, you know?
I think you're like living proof of that.
Yeah.
You should like be the mascot. Like, see, look.
Yeah.
I'll propose that, actually.
Okay.
It was a great fit. It was the right place at the right time, for sure. But so I was very excited when Pree found out. I think it was our doctor who told us about the camp over the summer. So that was very exciting, like absolutely brainy camp through Children's
Yeah.
Hospital.
Yeah. So they have camps for like kids of all different, they have different ones for
Yeah.
basically every disability or disease. So I obviously went to the epilepsy one, but at the same time there was another one going on for like heart disorders.
Yeah. All
So
kinds of-
it's for everything. I was a counselor in training for this.
I felt very, very good that Pree had a community. And I remember when you came back from that camp, all the CITs would sit together with the counselors and they would talk about things like these organic, these authentic, these really brave conversations. And I remember you coming back and being like, somebody talked about like losing their license. Somebody talked about having a seizure while driving. Somebody talked about the way they feel when they take all those meds. And I thought, wow, to have that common lived experience, there is nothing like that, because all of a sudden you're not the other, right? Like you're all part of this group. So for my daughter, I absolutely loved that. I absolutely loved that she had a community and felt like part of something, because like I said, that feeling of isolation that's just not healthy. That's not healthy, right? And I think this is pretty empowering when you have people who can share, like you can share your stories, because every time you share your story, you're holding your door open for someone else to share their story in their time when they're ready.
Oh, you're just dropping like these wise things in here. Every time you share your story, you're opening the door for someone else to share theirs. That is very beautiful.
I mean, she shared her story and I'm here now.
Oh, I'm
And
going to cry now. Okay.
Landis, yesterday, Pree said to me, she goes, Mom, are you nervous? And I said, well, yeah, maybe. And she said, because it's your first time sharing your epilepsy story. So that's my daughter. That was the conversation we had yesterday. She goes, it's your first time sharing your story. I've shared it before. Like you've shared it in big spaces. But yeah, so I was very, very relieved. I was very relieved. And then the advocacy
Oh, wait,
part,
I'm sorry. I just want to pause,
yeah,
Sarabjeet, and say thank you for sharing your story today,
yes,
because you are opening the door for someone
I
else.
hope so.
You
I
are.
hope so.
So I just want to say thank you so much. And I really appreciate this being the space that you're sharing it in. Thank you. I'm just so
course.
appreciative.
Well, and thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for this platform. And thank you for being your authentic self, and thank you for your humor. Oh my gosh, I love it. It doesn't have to be like, weigh us down all the time. You have this like fresh humor about it. And it's like, okay, fine, nice, So thank you for that.
People always think when they're like, what do you do? I'm like, I have an epilepsy podcast, but it's funny. And they're like, what the hell is wrong with you?
It's refreshing.
You're like, you're nuts. I'm like, I know.
It is refreshing. Like going back to Pree's school,
Yeah.
you're right, Landis. This is kind of like a very unusual situation. And I'm a retired educator. I was in the public school system for almost 30 years.
Wow.
And to any parents,
thank you.
Of course, absolutely. There's so much that needs to be done in the school system, though.
I used to be a high school public school teacher back in another
that,
life.
actually.
Yeah, pre-epilepsy. And I just classic burnout rate, 5 years. I loved my students. I loved the kids. Had nothing to do with that. I was just exhausted. But so the fact you did 30 years, I just want to say thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they were very lucky to have you.
It's a tough time to be an educator. And our educators are amazing, but they're working with such little resources.
Yeah.
So even though we were involved in, Maryland becoming a seizure safe school, we were involved in it, but I was also an educator who then received that training. And when I say it was minimalist training, it was really, really disappointing training. It was truly like, just a bunch of like A, B, C, D, E. There was no understanding, no video. So then I took it upon myself to talk to our central office, to administrators, and I did the training on my own. But I know we get very excited that our schools are making this progress, but believe me, we need to be really on top of it because it's not consistent. It's not consistent. What the school system I work with, what they brought out, I was very delighted when I saw that email, like mandatory, requirement. But when I saw it, Landis, it was like, this is not what we fought for. So I think all of us as parents and as citizens and as advocates, we really need to like just collaborate with like school administrators and really advocate for more nurses in the school. There are schools that have like part-time nurses who don't have nurses, who have, nurses aides, whatever it is, it puts our children at risk. So, and then we also have teachers who are so afraid. Great teachers. We have amazing teachers. I will always give a shout out to teachers, but I have been part of conversations where it's like, oh, I have a kid who has epilepsy. I just got this note from the school nurse. What am I going to do? I don't know what to do. So teachers are panicked. They're not equipped. Our training needs to be solid training. It needs to be consistent training, So as a community, we really, really need to like just push. I'm delighted that so many of our states are seizure safe schools, but we really need to see what that looks like. Because when I was on the receiving end, I was like, that's it? Are you kidding? So then I got permission to do a training for the staff, which include like an incredible video from the Epilepsy Foundation and all that. But
But that's what's so cool is that you were like, this isn't being done right.
no, it was,
I'm gonna do something.
yeah,
I see, the proactivity between the two of you is very impressive, because it's like, oh, I have the ability to change this, so I'm going to,
yeah.
which is really, and I know like
I'm the best.
Oh boy.
Oh.
We don't need to wait around, right? And we're all
Yeah.
like a community, like an amazing community of advocates. And we all have our own lens, whether it's cultural, professional, our age, our experiences, whatever it is. I mean, it's all very important that we come together as a community like that.
Yes, I agree. And just keep an eye on, like you said, like we've got the seizure safe schools, but let's keep an eye on it. Let's make sure
Yes.
that it's, being implemented because, again, it's not just for that child with epilepsy. It's, as you said, for those teachers who are like, I don't know
They're
what to do.
panicked.
Yeah. But I have noticed, Sarabjeet, that there's kind of like this theme just from your bio, and the fact that you work so hard to advocate for disability rights. And then also when you're like, oh, I saw this going wrong, with the seizure training, that like, it seems like that's where you channel sort of the energy to share your story is to kind of uplift others.
And where does that come from? Like, I think that comes from our diagnosis, to be honest. I think that I mean, like I said, I was a school counselor, and I know I was a really good school counselor. By
I
the way, I'm just
believe
going to
you.
say that
Oh,
because
yeah.
I love and I advocate and I cared and I would go the extra. But I do believe that that comes from, firstly, I would say it comes from my background, right? So in our background, service is very important, and treating everyone equally and with respect is really, really important. But I would also say it's my lived experience as a woman with epilepsy. You realize, gosh, everyone's got something. Everyone's got something. I'm going to meet you with empathy and with positive regard. I don't know what your challenges are. Nobody knew what my physical challenges were, my health challenges, my challenges as a mom, my challenges as a woman who was pregnant and afraid of like, what's this going to look like? Or as somebody who was working and kind of in the back of my mind, is today going to be a good day? You've been there, you've been there. So I think that my empathy and my drive comes from having epilepsy and just getting people, you know what I mean? We're all going through stuff. Who isn't going through stuff, right? Ours is hidden. Pree, you said somebody said something very funny to you the other day.
I mean, we were talking about this earlier
Yeah.
that like a few times I've told people like, yeah, I have epilepsy, and they're like, oh, you don't look like you would have epilepsy.
Like, what does that mean?
What does that mean? What should a person with epilepsy look like?
Right.
Please explain that to me.
What does that mean?
Like, yeah.
Oh,
You're
that's
like,
so
oh,
weird.
I never would have guessed.
I never would have
Okay, what?
guessed.
Do you need me to have a seizure right now or something to prove it? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, that's a really weird thing.
It's so weird.
I'm like processing it. I don't know, like, what do you even say? You're like, thanks.
Like,
What
no.
did you say?
But yeah, it's almost like, in kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying, Sarabjeet, is like, we need like empathy training or something, or like how, like, socialize, like, let's learn how to
Yeah.
talk to people who share something like that, and I think, like you said, meeting where people are, meeting them and acknowledging that they're going through something that we don't know about, which I think is so huge. It's one of my favorite quotes that a mentor gave to me like years and years ago, where it said, everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about.
Yeah.
Be kind always.
Yes.
And I just love
Yeah.
that, because it's like, if you just kind of go in with that and be like, they have something and I don't know what's going on, then you're not going to say, oh, well, you don't look like it. You're just going to expect that someone has
Yes.
something, because we all do.
And the empathy piece, like it has to start young, because I've worked with adults who lack any empathy. And I'm just like, what happened to you? I remember advocating to an entire team about a student who just had a new diagnosis of epilepsy. At the same time as her diagnosis, her family was becoming homeless.
Oh.
Imagine. So I sat at this meeting, administrators, like every big wig that you could think of. And I said, we really need to give this child a support class. I mean, obviously the 504 accommodations, all of that, but I wanted her to have a support class, because I said, the situation is just not conducive to learning. And with the new meds and all of that, the test back and forth, the sleep, we really need to be mindful and kind of offer her that extra support. And I promise you, Landis, I can't even make this up. One of the administrators looked at me in front of the whole boardroom and said, Sarabjeet, that's a really sad story. Now, should we give that extra resource class to everyone who has a sad story? And I thought, wow. Like, what part of that did you miss?
I felt like I just got punched.
I
Like
know.
I just like
I know.
oh
I wouldn't leave the
God.
meeting. I stayed after. I spoke to the principal. I could not get anywhere. I couldn't get anywhere. We have a long ways to go. We have a really, really long ways to go. And I say that as a woman with epilepsy, as a mom of a child with epilepsy, as a young adult with epilepsy, and as an educator. We just have a really long ways to go.
I mean, and that's the thing too, is that you have so many different hats in this story. You have so many different roles. Where do you feel like what was the biggest struggle in those roles? Because you said I'm a mom living with epilepsy and keeping it a secret too, and then I'm also an educator and throughout my career, and there's just so many different little spheres where I'm oh my gosh, I can't imagine what that felt like to hang on to it.
I was telling Pree yesterday that when my kids were young, my son is 2 years younger than Pree. When my children were young and I was working, at the school, picking the kids up, bringing them home, I would be so wiped out. You understand this, zero energy. Yeah. And there would be this you should be out playing with the kids, but I was but I really, really need to just decompress. I just need that little nap, So I feel I think I'm a pretty good mom, but I know, thank you. I'll take it. But I do feel like I missed out on some playtime with the kids just because I was battling my own, I am so tired, and that's hard for anyone to understand if they're not taking these meds. And I would blame myself, you're just lazy. You're just not as active as other people. What's up with you? You know what I mean? It wasn't
the comparison game gets real brutal in our heads.
Oh my gosh. My gosh. All the other moms are out playing. Why aren't you? And I did feel that was hard. That was hard. So I think that was the biggest challenge when the kids were little and I wanted to be so active, but I also just needed my rest, so just both of those things. That was a tough thing to juggle.
Yeah, totally. You've mentioned that you guys have been talking previous to this recording, right, about this, and Sarabjeet, you even mentioned you talked to your mom and everything, and now I'm going to be nosy Nelly and be what'd you guys talk about?
The biggest cultural stigma would be marriage. If somebody knows that you have epilepsy, who would marry you? That is still a thing. And that is one of the things my mom and I did speak about. She said that she knows somebody who married somebody who has epilepsy and didn't know until they got married because it was a secret that was kept, because otherwise you're not marriageable material. So,
I believed that about myself for many years.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I was diagnosed at 32, so it was a lot later, but it was, I was who would want this? Who would want to deal with seizures? Who would want, so I remember I tried to date at first without telling anyone. And that was actually my plan, was to get someone to fall in love with me and then tell him
Oh,
that I had
right,
epilepsy.
right.
And this was very early in my diagnosis, but it's just very interesting that this is, I feel like it's something that, and I don't want to speak out of turn in any way, but it kind of transcends culture too,
I agree.
In that, because I know the questions I get the most from people are generally about dating. When do I tell someone I have epilepsy? But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things where I think
Yes.
it's a gray area with
That
it when especially comes to dating, marriage, the whole thing, you
yes.
know.
And stigma does. It crosses boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Socioeconomic, cultural,
Yes.
religious. I mean, that's
Yes.
just that stigma, you know? That's why these important conversations are so important. I will just say, like, Pree's dad, my husband, amazing. So I found the one, even like when I was pregnant with Preetham, like when I first of all, like he was part of that team, right? Like that team of like how are we going to do this? How is it going to work with taking the medication and the sleep and the hormones and all of that. But when Preetham was born, when my son Akal was born, it was just wifey, you sleep, I'll be up with the babies and I'll take care of the babies, and of course he had work afterwards and stuff, but it was not even a spoken arrangement. It was just that understanding between husband and wife. And this is what my need is, and my parents as well. When Keith was busy with like his busy time of work, I went to stay with my parents. And my parents like helped with the babies and they took care and no questions asked, So, I mean, I had a great medical team for sure. I had, my neurologist was in touch with the OB, but I had a great, great support team. And I would always say, like, lean in, lean in. I know sometimes we feel like, oh, it's not their problem. I don't want to burden them. That's on me. Lean in, right? I mean, the people that you surround yourself with, the ones that you trust, they're there for us, right? And we're there for them as well. So, could not have done it with like that amazing support team. My parents, my mom-in-law, my husband, amazing. And Akal has been like a really amazing brother also. I feel like, my
Yeah.
son has seen a lot, and
Yeah.
and he is a supportive, really he's a good guy. He's a good
Yes.
guy because it's a lot, right? It's a lot to like be in this family where we're constantly like talking about stuff like this. And he
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
seen seizures. And of course, seizures are scary. I mean, for the person who's having it, the person who's witnessing it.
Hmm.
But
Totally.
yeah, to have that support is pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And like you said, bringing it back to finding a partner, finding the one you love,
Yes,
like
yes,
you found the one, like the one that's just like this is what we're gonna do because that's what you need done, and that's kind of like that's like the thing that I think sets it apart. It being love and true love,
yes,
in my
yes,
experience anyway. Steve does the same thing. It's just
yes.
sometimes they'll look at me and be like, you need a nap. And I'm like, no, I don't.
Right.
They're like, no, go. And I'm like, you're right. Damn it. Like,
Just that understanding.
hate that you're always right.
Oh yeah. I'm happy you found the one.
Yeah, well, same to you. Okay, so I get this question from so many moms or parents who are like, "Oh my gosh, like no matter how old their kid is, they're like, how do I send them to school? They can't go to college." And Pree, you're a recent graduate, and I'm just so curious as to what your college experience was like, and like what advice maybe you have for other people going off to college.
For me, like, I always had a really hard time going to the offices and my professors because I was always kind of like, I don't want to rely on this help from the school. Like, I can manage everything by myself. I'm one of those people who's like, I can do it. I don't need help. So I was always very hesitant to. But towards the end of my college, I started being like, maybe this could help me. So I started going to the office, getting my accommodations, and the truth is that they did help me a lot.
That's that's wonderful to hear. It's also like I can tell there's a little pain in your voice. Like, damn it,
Yeah.
that worked.
I know.
Yep,
She
I
was
get it.
right. But because it goes beyond like extended time for tests, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I was able to tell my professors I can't take tests before 10 a.m. And like,
Oh, that's
I
huge.
yeah. And then like, certain times where if I couldn't sleep, I could tell them, hey, here's my form. I couldn't sleep last night, so I can't come to class. I'll
Yeah.
turn in my work a day later.
Yeah.
Right? So it actually does really come into play, like my mom was saying, with the whole late nights and staying up later. I think college is a bit tougher than high school, mostly because, like I said, when I was home, I always had my family who knew exactly what I was going through and they knew how to help me and they would notice things that I wouldn't notice, right? And so going to college, nobody knew anything about me.
Yeah.
So it was like that safety net that I always had my whole life was just gone. And I was like thrown into the wilderness all of a sudden. And
Yeah.
so I kind of had to learn how to figure that whole thing out on my own, like how do I open up to a brand new group of people? How many people do I have to open up to? What exactly do I have to tell them about myself? It was just like a lot of internal conflicts about how open I was really willing to be and if this was a matter of like, do I only tell people that I trust or do I tell everybody that I'm ever going to be around? You know, um it's tough even like the first time that I told my roommate I had epilepsy. It's just cuz I feel like one of the hardest things is starting that
Yeah.
conversation. Like how do I
That is
just
so
Yes.
true.
yeah.
Yes.
Starting it.
That's
Yes.
a good point.
Wow.
That's a very tough. Like we'll just be
Yes.
sitting there talking about boys, and I'll be like, "Oh, by the way, can I talk to you about my medical history?"
Yeah.
Like,
That's a good point.
there's not really a good time to bring it up, which is probably the hardest part. But I, had to learn every time I had a roommate, I would just kind of, make myself feel uncomfortable, I guess, because it was important.
I just had to make myself feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like leaning, like acknowledging it and then just leaning into it. That is you. Yeah, I see where you get your wisdom from,
Brave.
Pree.
I know. Having a counselor in the house, you learn a few things. But yeah, and I would always teach all of my roommates seizure first aid
Yeah.
on what to do if I had a seizure. And they all had my mom's phone number so that if anything happened, they could contact her. And so that it did come in hand a few times. And freshman year was worse than the rest of the years in terms of seizures because I was just learning how to figure all of that out, being alone. But yeah,
Those
once
are
you
really good tips, though.
yeah.
Like giving, I taught them seizure first aid.
Yes.
Yeah.
I told them about my epilepsy. First, in the wrong order. Okay, so I told them about my epilepsy, made myself uncomfortable, then taught seizure first aid, then gave them my emergency contact number. Like,
Right.
those are 3 really great pieces of advice for
Yeah.
anyone out there who's, I think it's not even just college. It's like I was traveling with someone recently who has epilepsy, and we met at the airport, and we sat down. And she goes, "Okay, so if I have a seizure, this is what you do. A, B," and I was like, "You are good." Like, I was like,
Right.
that is. So I think again, you're wise beyond your years, Pree, and I think this can apply to so many situations, and like in the workforce, you might want to like let the person sitting next to you know, like these things. I'm going to take this with me and pass it on. I know now to like, new people that I meet and just be like, okay, I'm going to pull a Pree. I have epilepsy. This is seizure first aid, and here's my emergency contact. Okay, let's have coffee, like kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
How was it like? Just kind of, I don't know. I always just feel like there's the mental health aspect that doesn't get talked about all the time with really anything in this world, but then also with epilepsy too, just because there's so many different factors that can play a role, whether it's medication side effects, whether it's the seizure itself that can create the depression, whether it's just having epilepsy can kind of cause your mood to sort of, like the realization of it. How did you deal with that, Pree? Did you kind of have any, like, as you were in college or maybe even before, like any sort of journey that you felt like you had to go on?
Yeah. So soon after I was diagnosed, after I was 10, obviously I started a few new medications, and one of them I think just really, really hit me. I talked about this very briefly when I spoke at the congressional briefing, where I was just like, I spent my teenage years with a dark cloud over my head at all times. And that is not an exaggeration in any way.
Also, I
Genuinely.
think you need a hair flip when you say when I spoke at the congressional hearings. Like, I think there it is. Okay. There we go. Okay.
That was such a missed opportunity. But yeah, so between the years of, I would say probably like 10 and 14, I literally just was sad. Like, that's it. Like, I no longer wanted to be in this world, and I didn't know what to do with those feelings because, again, first of all, I had seizures that made me feel different and weird, and then all of a sudden, I just had this like constant darkness inside of me that made me feel even more different and weird. And I just, it was like, like you said, like mental health is not something that we talk about ever. Not in the epilepsy community, not in the South Asian community, not in the world. So it's, when you start experiencing those symptoms, then it kind of closes you off. And in addition to that, like, I was so young that I didn't really know what it was that hit me. And so it was very tough. It was even more isolating than keeping the secret of epilepsy, I feel like, or maybe it was both of them combined, where I just literally all the time, I just wanted to be sleeping, like, and I didn't really have any hobbies. I didn't really have any energy to do anything.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like you had epilepsy. Okay, and now we're going to give you a medication that's going to make you really fucking sad.
Yeah.
And you're 10. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, I think, and I hear that. I know I have been through that with different epilepsy medications where they have caused significant mental health issues. With suicide ideation, suicidality, getting like as far as that, and then like that dark cloud too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, but I look at it and I'm like, I was an adult. Like I could kind of recognize it, So like, you poor little thing. I just want to like hug little Pree. So what changed for you that you were able to kind of come out of the darkness?
It was like my parents who kind of, noticed a few things, and they found me a therapist. So I started therapy when I was about 12, I think. Yeah, and that was an escape for me, honestly. Like, I know, like, a lot of people say, like, oh, I have to go to therapy. For me, being so young and feeling this way, not feeling like I could talk to anyone about it, I loved those Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Oh my God. It was just so freeing, right?
Yeah.
Like, even if we weren't going super deep and dark because I was so young, it was just having somebody, an unbiased person who I could just tell everything to. It's very freeing, I feel like, because, between epilepsy and mental health, they're so intertwined, and so many people experience what I did and don't talk about it because we feel ashamed, because that's a second burden you have to add. But I don't know. The truth is that, there's nothing to be ashamed of, and we really need to normalize these things, right? The epilepsy fundraiser was actually the second time that I spoke in front of my school in high school. The first time, my friend and we had started a mental health club at school. And
you started a mental health club?
Yes.
Yeah.
You are like prolific.
So we created a movie to show in front of the whole school at another school assembly, where we talked about the difference between how people treat mental health versus physical health. So we would have a bunch of different scenes, right? So there was one where a girl would be on crutches, and we had our friends as like the main actors and everything.
This is
And
fantastic. I need to see
one
this
of them,
video.
I know, one of them like borrowed crutches from like the athletic department, and we had her like, you know, like she was walking inside somewhere and everyone was rushing like, oh, let me get the door for you, let me take your books from you, like, do you need anything? But then like, you know, someone else was just kind of sitting isolated looking upset, and people were like, why are they always alone? Like, that's so weird, right? Like, they're so unfriendly. And so it's just you know, the fact that things are not normalized, and they really need to be. And I feel like you notice that not just with like with physical health, you know, you see that in terms of broken bones and stuff, but again, with hidden disabilities, that's another thing that we stigmatize so much. We put in, you know, the category of physical health, but then we don't, it's just so different. You know, all the stigmas that our communities are constantly, or all the things that our communities are constantly experiencing, that we place this huge stigma around.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you, you know, not only sharing here, but like the video that you made just to like literally show it, you know, like show the thing you can't see. And then I think, you know, in doing that, I just think of all the young people who felt seen in that moment, you know, and that's really, really special. Speaking of special, the two of you are so special.
Oh,
Like,
thank you. As are you.
Oh my
As are you,
God.
Landis.
For
My
starting
God.
this. You're
this has
making
been
a
such
difference.
a joy to talk to you guys. And I am just so appreciative of you coming on and sharing your stories and just being so vulnerable and open and brave. And I just like the amount of goosebumps I got during this conversation, just like all the time. You guys are really wonderful.
And
Thank you
I'm
so much.
proud of you for
Oh.
speaking up about it. This is like her first big time, so
It
I want to
is.
give a shout out to my mom.
Oh my gosh.
Because she's always been my biggest cheerleader on the side, but now it's
How
your time to shine.
sweet
You know?
of you. I
I'm
was
not
so
crying. You're
quiet.
crying.
No, I was so quiet about everything, you know, and
Mhm.
even now I think people are going to see this and they're going to be like, oh, we knew Pree had epilepsy. We didn't know you did as well.
Yeah.
But runs in our family, but you ran with it. You know?
Oh, another
There you go.
wisdom bomb.
No,
I love
so
it.
true. You know what, Landis? I think in every family, there is like one brave person that breaks that cycle. In every family, regardless of what we're talking about, speaking about an illness or a trauma or a habit or whatever it is, you know, in our family, it's Pree, for sure. For sure. We've never had brave conversations. We don't talk about uncomfortable things, you know? So, you know, thanks for running with it. You know?
Thanks for supporting me.
Yeah. I mean, now you both are. Now you're both just running side by side.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you guys 3 questions that have nothing to do with what we've been talking about.
Okay.
Okay. Number 1, pretty easy. What's your favorite color?
Mine is white.
Okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that like all of the colors technically or something? Isn't
Yeah.
white like have like a yeah? So that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's like the
Inclusivity.
crisp version of everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very on brand.
Mine is green. I actually just got a green shower.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited.
Wait, a green shower?
Yeah, I just
Like-
got green tiles.
Oh,
The tropical
okay.
look.
Oh, that's
I
fun.
love
Hey.
green. Even like my home screen, like when people were designing their home screens in 2020, mine is green.
Nice.
So,
Green's good.
yeah.
I love it. Yeah, it's a very full of life sort of color.
Mm.
You know, very
Yeah.
vibrant.
Yeah.
It's on but like not in your face. So it's like a
Right.
very, you know, it's again, you guys are very on par for, you know, on brand for your color. Okay, if you had like unlimited funds and like time and everything, and you could go anywhere for a month, where would you go?
I feel like I would go to India,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
I love India. Like, it's like being home, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have family, and then there's also, the culture. I'm already like into it, but it's also very different at the same time between America and India. I would love to spend a month there.
And I would love that too. Like to
Yeah.
have a month, because when we go, it's always like touch and go. You know what I mean? It's never
Exactly.
been a month, but to
Yeah.
have that, and money's no issue either, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
No.
gosh, we're traveling all around India. We are traveling all around India.
We're buying those outfits. Oh my God, those $5,000 outfits.
I want to stay at the palaces. I want to do the Ayurvedic like treatments. Okay, yes.
Can I go with you?
Please come with us. The more the merrier, always. Always the more the merrier. Come with us.
Okay, and then the last question. What does it mean to you to be a friend?
Unconditional positive regard. I see you in your good and your bad, and I honor you in whatever stage and space you're at.
Yeah.
That's a friend. Yeah.
Yeah, similar to that, just somebody who not only loves you and supports you, but somebody who is willing to understand you as well, right? Even if it's someone who you have disagreements with, they're not like, no. They're willing to understand where you're coming from and respect your boundaries. I feel like
Yes.
that's something that's very important for me. So yeah, those I think are the best friendships.
Yeah. Boundaries protect us.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah, really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Totally. And just like, I love how both of you, it's like, it's perspective is just woven in there. It's like, I take you at your best, I take you at your
Yes.
worst, but I also want to understand where you're coming from.
Yes.
I mean, that's very, very beautiful. Again, very on brand. Bhutani women, Well, thank you again so much for doing this. My heart is so full just hanging out with the two of you.
Oh, Landis, thank
Thank
you
you
so much.
This
guys
was
are the
such a
best.
great idea. I'm so happy we could do this together.
Yes, thank
I
you for
know.
including me.
Yeah.
First mom-daughter duo we've had.
Is that
this
right?
Yes.
And it's perfect
Oh.
timing before Mother's Day, too.
I know.
Like,
I love
yeah.
it. I love it. I love it. You
Wow,
guys are
Landis,
just the
you
best.
are very special. You are
Oh,
like a
you
bright,
are.
bright light. Keep doing what you're
Oh.
doing. All the best to you. And
Thank
you really are amazing. You're an
Oh.
uplifting person. So thank you. Thank you.
I
Thank you.
really appreciate that.